Welcome to yet another episode of Within WordPress, the podcast you should all be listening to, watching, and all of those things. And with me today is somebody who flew in all the way from the United States. Well, sort of, right? It's a connection. It felt like flying in because we had a little trouble getting up uh, to speed, getting all the tech stuff working together. But with me today is Steve Zehngut. Uh, Zengut. I think there's a difference of
Love
pronunciation.
it.
Pronunciation
Either
over.
way, it's fine.
Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
So I think you and I go back. I say this to a lot of my guests, but you and I go back quite a while.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how many years, but it's probably around the 7, 8 year mark. But
It's got to be. It's got to be at least that. Yeah.
yeah. So, but for the people that do not know you, where have they seen you inside of WordPress?
Yeah. Great question. So, thank you for having me. By the way, I'm happy to be here. So I, I started my agency, Zeke, 28 years ago. So we started in 1995. Um, about 15, 13, 15 years ago, I started the OC WordPress meetup. We used to host it at my office. So pre-pandemic, actually, even before the pandemic, we went fully remote, but I had an office and we built the office around the meetup. We had a meetup space in the center of our office.
Awesome.
So that was fun. And then, from the meetup, also, stemmed the OC WordCamp. So that was originally organized by Brandon and Jeff at Pixel Jar.
Yeah.
They did it for about 5 years. Dave Margowski took over, and he did that for about 2 years, and then I took over as lead organizer for 2 years. So I helped organize OC WordCamp, and then I was also on the organizing committee for a couple of years for the US WordCamp. Um, and in addition to that, I've spoken at several WordCamps all over the US.
I was going to say OC. I know what it means, but I don't think everybody
Oh, sorry.
with OC.
Sorry. So I'm located in Orange County, California, specifically in Huntington Beach. But we used to host the WordCamp at UC Irvine.
That's a lovely region. I was there a couple of years back with as staying with Kareem actually,
Hmm. Yep.
which is I think he's located in Huntington Beach as well.
He's a little bit north of me, or
Or
was.
was was, yeah.
Manhattan Beach is about 45 minutes north of me.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So distances are easily overcome in the U.S. I
And
remember.
and 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 in the US, you notice we describe everything in minutes, especially Southern California, right?
Yeah.
We don't describe everything in miles or kilometers. It's always minutes.
Now you like your traffic jams there.
Yeah, it's all about freeway time.
Yeah. But on the WordPress side of things, so you've organized quite a few WordCamps, meetups. Um, what got you into that? Because that's volunteer time. That doesn't get paid in any way, shape.
I noticed. Yeah. So I'll tell you an interesting story. So, I've been working in WordPress, for many, many years. And my business partner at the time, Jeff Turner, and I were, lacking in, resources. We had brought on some WordPress projects, and we just didn't have enough people to, fulfill them. And so we just started looking around for freelancers that we could hire.
Yeah,
In addition to that, we also had some overflow work that we just couldn't take on. And so we were looking for people to refer work to. And so literally sitting in my office, Jeff said, why don't we start a meetup? And we'll just gather a bunch of WordPress folks together. And I said, what's a meetup?
yeah,
And so he went on a meetup, set it up, and a few weeks later, we were hosting a meetup at my office. And we had, a dozen or so people just from the Orange County area that were into WordPress. But I think the fact that we grew this from a place of wanting to refer work created this really cool sense of community in Orange County.
Mm,
From the get go, it was uh, not a competitive environment, but a very cooperative environment. And just from there, it just sort of grew, right? So people started collaborating, started referring work to each other, created teams, created companies out of the WordPress meetup. And I think last time I looked, the meetup was something like 2,000 members. Um, so it grew fast. And so originally, we had a very small office in Huntington Beach. We had a front room, and very quickly the meetup started spilling over into the hallway. Right, it was standing room only, and we had too many people for the space, and
yeah,
so we actually moved across the street into a warehouse space, and we specifically bought or rented this warehouse space just so we could have a bigger meetup space. And so at one point we were getting 50, 60 people to each meetup. We started hosting parties. In addition, so we had some social events in addition to the meetup, and then the WordCamps came after that.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so the you just you kind of say that offhand, like the word camps kind of follow that, but that's usually quite a big step because at that you've been spending time organizing, spending money because if you're renting space, you'll most likely had some refreshments here and there as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep. You can't see it back there. That's actually something that the meetup members made for me. But there's a quote on there that says, right in the middle, it says, "Does anybody need a beer?" Because that's how I started all the meetups. Like I'd get up, I would crack a beer, and I'd just ask anybody if they needed a beer. And so we had all kinds of refreshments, but also adult refreshments at the meetups, and that just became part of the thing, right? And so
when was
we got
this?
together, we just celebrated. So when did the meetup start?
Yeah,
Gosh, I wanna say it's somewhere around 2008, 2009.
yeah,
Yeah. That
that,
that's about and soon after that is when, and so I'd love to take credit for it, I can't, right? So Jeff and Brandon at Pixel Jar started the WordCamp in Orange County, right around the same time. And so while we were building the meetup together, they were also uh, started building up WordCamp Orange County, and that became, a pretty big WordCamp over time. So over the 9 year span when I was involved in that, it became a significant WordCamp. I think at the last one I organized, we had something like 400 people attend that
that's a
WordCamp.
good size. That's a good size.
Yeah,
I like sizes in that range.
yeah.
Gives enough. So the hallway tracks is where
That's
uh, my preference lies with
what
WordCamps.
it's all about.
Yeah, I think so, and it's mostly not because I don't. There's nothing to learn from me. That's not there. That's not the problem because there always is. But it's more that I enjoy the hallway track, and with 500 people, you have ample opportunity to have very meaningful conversation because that's essentially what it is. And
Well,
the size of that is just for me feels like I've been to obviously WordCamp US, WordCamp Europe. Those are in the 2 to 3,000 range. Um, I've been to very small WordCamps that were less than 100 people.
mm,
Those are interesting as well.
mhm.
Recently went to Whitley Bay, close to Newcastle in the UK, which I think had about 100 people. But the 4 or 500 is my sweet spot in terms of you get to see who you want to see. You have time for conversations. There's everything there. Usually, that amount of people also demands a higher quality of organization. Um, and I guess it's the size that the WordCamp Netherlands, the one I've been organizing, has been part of that number, just about.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with everything you said, right? I think smaller word camps are fun. They're a little bit more intimate. You sort of get to know everybody there. Larger word camps, like the big word camps like US and Europe are great. They're great to go to, but it can be a little overwhelming and harder to do some networking. And so I do like those word camps that are in the 2 to 400 person range. But at that range, we also bring in more sponsorship dollars. And what I liked about organizing WordCamp is we got some great speakers. We had great tracks. We had great sessions. We did sessions on both Saturday and we did business sessions on Sunday.
Yep.
So there was a lot of good content, but we were also able to put a lot of focus and effort into the social and the networking events. We would do in Orange County specifically. One of our traditions became a golf tournament the day before WordCamp. Um, we
OOC
did
or
yeah, we had food trucks, that were there all day. We really put a lot of effort into food, but we gave a lot of opportunity for collaboration and networking.
yeah.
And so that part really, like you said, that's the stuff that really appeals to me when I go to a WordCamp.
It appeals to me so much that in the last 2 WordCamp Netherlands, we have specifically, as I was responsible for the program, we specifically allotted larger chunks of breaks just for the sake of having breaks because
Yeah.
we know that's when the conversations are there. And we on the second day, we even had like a dedicated hour and a half of no talks, just communicate, talk. Because you know how that goes, right? You want to see some talks, and you have a conversation, and then there's this there's this guy slamming the gong. Like, okay, next session starts. That was me, by the way. Really loved.
I love it.
Yeah, and but then you have to cut off your conversation, right? On to the next thing, and that dedicated 90 minutes. People really enjoyed that because you don't have the guilty feeling like I'm missing something now. I get to have that conversation. Like, "Yeah, I'll catch up with you later." You know how that goes. So we built in times for that. We always had some way of it, but we've gone like, okay, just block a full session for this because people enjoy it so much. And
That's great.
I do feel that the tendency is more in this direction in general. How would you say? Because you've obviously been doing that from the get go. Are
Yeah,
you? Yeah.
I haven't been to a WordCamp since the pandemic, so I don't know.
Sure.
But
On empty.
yeah, yeah, but
On empty.
I can't. I got to imagine that people at this point are really craving that connection piece,
Yeah.
right? That's really what it's all about. And so I think, we're talking about by giving those breaks is genius. We would pack the entire Saturday, right? We'd have up to 4 tracks on the Saturday.
Wow.
The Sunday sessions were actually my favorite. Um, One of the other things that we brought into WordCamp is the business track, right? We on Sunday we'd have some highly technical tracks or some highly technical talks, and we'd have one track doing that, but we also had a business track
Yeah.
that was specifically about um, how to make money in the WordPress space.
Yeah. Well, there's money to be made for sure.
Absolutely.
If I remember correctly, you've spoken at WordCamps as well on business topics.
That's typically all I speak about when I go to WordCamps.
Okay.
I think I've in all the WordCamps I've spoken at, I think I may have given 2 technical sessions, but most everything I propose is some sort of business topic.
What is it about business topics specifically that excites you more than other topics?
Yeah, I just I've always felt that that's where I can give back the most, right? And I think there is a need, for people to talk to freelancers, especially about, things like account management, time management,
Fun
billing,
subjects.
collecting money, change orders. Change orders is that one's near and dear to my heart. I love talking about change orders because I found that that's something that people don't, often don't manage very well.
What is a
And
change order?
it's, so change order is basically charging for your time for anything that changes within the scope of a project.
Right.
and being able to articulate that and developing a process for that. And frankly, it's not something that I was good at for a long time, right? And I had to learn it over time. And so I like sharing that with with freelancers and with agency owners, um, because yeah, I find that when I start having those conversations, people are leaving a lot of money on the table,
Oh, they are.
but just not managing that properly.
The whole principle of not fully understanding what feature creep is, and then
Yes.
everything that comes and falls from that is
Yeah.
that's
Feature
hard.
creep, project scope, change orders. Those are things I love talking about.
Yeah, yeah. What is your and I'm going to assume big here, but what is your most interesting example that you use in this? Because whenever people ask, I have an example, but I'm fairly certain you have one as well. Is there one you can mention? With
Oh, sure. I mean,
how specific?
I have lots. I'm not going to name any clients specifically. um, but I have tons of mistakes that I've made over 28 years, right? And so I can point to specific projects. I've actually during talks and during times when I've given advice to agency owners, I've actually pulled out scopes, actual scopes, and shown where we've lost money, what change orders looked like, why they came about, and specifically how to identify when a scope is changing, right? And how to not only articulate that, but also sell it to a client, right? And let them know why these things are important. And so, yeah, I've got all kinds of examples that are floating around in my head of big scope adjustments that we've had to make and places we've lost money. Um, so yes.
Is there one you can use as an example to explain?
Oh man. Um,
Putting you on the spot. So if
no,
it's
that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I just in the past few years, the one that comes to mind was a big SaaS project that we were working on, and this was so this isn't WordPress specific, but this SaaS product was essentially an entire custom ERP system that we were building for this client. Um, Not only was it custom ERP, but it was a custom front end ordering system. And so it's a B2B SaaS product. So it's not a store per se, but it is an ordering system that
yeah.
this client's customers were using to order their product. And this client was a manufacturer. Um, the specific scope change that happened wasn't our issue. We built this to spec. I think what we could have probably done differently was um, get a little bit more defined on the user interface, because what happened was we built it. We built it with the client. We got his input. Everything was going swimmingly until it wasn't. And so um, and
Until
so until it wasn't. And ultimately what happened was the client just had a different picture in his head of what the final outcome of the interface was going to be.
yeah.
And for some reason, even though he was involved in the entire process, thought that it was going to change at some point to what he had in his head. Um, and when that came out, um, the scope wasn't defined enough. There was enough left open to interpretation,
Yeah.
where ultimately we had to end up having to eat a lot of hours to make the change for that interface. And so I know I'm being kind of vague here, but that's the one that sticks out in my mind. And so we did end up eating a lot of hours to make that run right.
So I was looking for examples so people could sort of relate to it, and I think even though it's relatively vague, it is immediately something people can relate to because I think we've all seen those projects where you discuss it ad nauseum, like everything is talked about, written out, designed, and whatnot, and yet we as the people who build it, we kind of know there's room for an implementation, but you want to spend 2 more weeks just to hash out those final details. Most of us will go like, yeah, we'll figure it out.
I'll give you a simple one. So here's a simple one that
Ah, okay, yeah,
sticks out in my mind recently. So um, we were building a WooCommerce project for a client recently, and they gave us a couple of sample sites to match, right? And so we looked at the sample sites, we interpreted them, we wrote out a scope, we signed off on the scope. Here's what we're building, and we went off and we built it. What we didn't realize is that they were looking at a specific piece of the site that we weren't looking at. And even though it wasn't captured in the scope, it was in their mind as to
yeah,
that it was going to be there. And that specific thing was the side cart. So you click add to cart, little side drawer opens up, shows the product that's added. You can go to the cart right there. Right.
yeah,
Um, and ultimately, we missed it because we were really looking at everything else. We were looking at the product pages. We were looking at the static cart. We were looking at the checkout, and we wrote the scope around that. And so it was simply side cart. The term side cart was just sort of left out of the scope. But again, it was in the client's mind. They said we want it to be and function like this site.
yeah,
So ultimately, um, we did end up writing a change order before the sidecards. It did work out, but those again, I think we're saying sort of the same things. Um, interpreting what's in the client's head and really spelling all that out.
yeah.
That can ultimately lead to scope creep and change orders and things like that. And ultimately, over time we've moved to user stories, right? So a user story that would cover that would be customer is buying something, they click and a drawer opens so that they can view what they've seen, right? And again, those are things that sometimes just get missed in the project scope.
Would you say that clients that have, uh, as a company, are more mature and therefore have better aligned budgets with what they want, are the companies where these type of scopes and creeps and all whatnot happen less or more?
um, I don't know that I've seen a change over 28 years in less or more as far as scope creep goes. I think it's pretty consistent, and it's pretty consistent across all budgets, right? Scope creep just happens. Um, the way I've learned to deal with that over time is to just set the expectation up front with our client and let them know, hey, listen, you know, w- we're going to do our best to capture all the features that you're looking for. We're going to write it down. We're going to agree to it, right? We're both going to sign it. It's going to be approved, but I'm telling you from experience that there's probably something in your head, right, that we're not going to hear or capture that is just going to stick with you throughout the project. And so expect and budget for a potential increase of say 20%,
Yeah,
right? And I set that expectation at the onset because if we don't if there is no scope creep and we've captured it, right, they're really happy, right? But if ultimately if we have to have the conversation about scope creep along the way, I've already set that expectation, so there are no surprises.
that's a good principle to really understand. It's not just the scope creep, but expectation management. I think so. Before I dived into this world, I came from. I worked at a large insurance company. Was doing many large technical projects and stuff, and having to deal with, because I was translating. I was working at the HR department, but I was doing tech projects. So those two, by definition, don't match. So I had to be
Mhm.
translate HR to IT all the time and IT back to HR. Um, this is the one thing I learned the quickest. So if I don't calculate in that they're going to need to understand that certain things are going to be different than what they have in their head, I was going to have a very difficult time if I didn't do that. So expectation management, like Okay, so we've agreed on this, exactly what you just said. We've agreed on this, but you're going to have to assume there are things hidden in how you want them versus how we're going to build it.
Yep.
That's expect this. Don't be like, we just had a great conversation. We see eye to eye. We're there. We're in unison. Kumbayana, all that stuff. Stuff is going to be interpreted differently. That's how human nature is.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. The expectation management layer is probably one of the most important ones because it's also the very small things, right? It's not when something goes wrong. It's also the little things. Um,
Well, and one of the things that, and I'm glad you said that. Yeah, managing expectations is key, but transparent communication is something that I've always practiced, and I
yeah,
think is what has led to me, being able to be in business for this long, right? When there is a change, right, or when there is something that is unexpected, the first thing that I do, or actually the first thing my team does, and they're all trained to do this, is they bring it to the client's attention immediately, right? We don't hide anything. We just say, "Hey, listen, we discovered this thing," or the client may bring up something and now there's a change in the project. What we do is we just practice open communication,
yeah.
right?
It's the best way.
Rather than and rather than just saying at that point, when a change happens or needs to happen, rather than just saying, "Okay, well, I'll get you a change order." Right.
Yeah, yeah,
What we do is right, and I say this because I actually found a lot of people, that's how they implement change orders, right? They hear a change, and without having conversation saying, "I'll get you over a change order," right?
yeah.
Or worse, just email a change order,
You you
right?
you still need to
Eh,
sell it. Like
right.
you
So
need
so
pre-sell it.
for us, it's always a conversation, right? That's just how we run our agency. We what we say to the client is this: say, "Hey, listen, this is what we heard, right? Just want to first make sure we understood what we heard, right?" And my trick is this: I like to say, "Hey, this feels like it could be a change, right? This feels like it's out of scope,
Yeah,
or this is how we're seeing it on our side," and then we present it. What do you think?
yeah, yeah. That's a good way.
Right. And so that always leads to a conversation, right? And then at that point, we can either, maybe we do determine it's change order, maybe it's not, maybe this was in scope after all. Maybe there's a horse trade that we need to do and pull something out of the scope to get this into scope, right? Those conversations are fantastic, right? And so that's how we run our agency.
Would you give an example of let's just say that there's this definition of a thing that has to change. Both parties have agreed upon it. It was there. It was acknowledged by both parties. It needs to change. The client doesn't have any budget for it. Like maybe this is not the first one. Maybe this is the second one or the third one already. And the 10, 15, 20% of extra margin is gone. What do you do then?
Well, there's a couple ways we handle that, right? Um, if there's, so there's a couple limitations that could happen. Budget, I think you was your question, but they also may not have enough time, right? That's what we find more often these days is the limitation is time versus budget. There's a deadline coming up, a trade show, some sort of press release is going out. Something's coming up that where we just don't have enough time. Even if they had $1 million for us to do this,
Yep.
time is the limiting factor, right? And so we first identify what those limitations are. Is it time? Is it budget? Right? What are the limiting factors? Right?
Yep.
We get those all out on the table uh, and discuss those things. Right? Then again, we just turn it into a conversation. Okay, don't have enough time, don't have enough budget. We have some limiting factors. We need to get this thing in. Right? At that point, I turn the conversation into resources. Right? What are the Zeke resources? What resources do I need to make this thing happen? Right? Because when I start to turn the conversation into resources, now I bring the client into the conversation about how we're going to move those resources around, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, that may turn into a horse trade, right? So we say, okay, we've got these resources working on this other feature, right? I'm hearing that actually this thing that you want that we need to put in is a high priority. So if we can deprioritize this feature, right, we can dedicate those resources to finishing this feature in your time or your budget or whatever that factor is. That's
Yeah.
usually the way it goes when we've got a limiting factor, right? Then they start to ask, well, what about the thing we just horse traded for, right? What about that lower priority thing?
Yeah.
At that point, we start to talk about phases, right? So now we're talking about, okay, how do we break off a phase two for this project, right? And what does that look like? When do you need it? And that's where we tend to steer the conversation at that point.
Do you have mechanisms that you use for clients to determine the uh, the importance of a feature before going in?
Yeah, it really. So at the beginning of the project, we've identified all the stakeholders that are on the project, right? And so,
The
um,
DMU,
what's that?
the DMU, the decision making unit.
Right. Correct. Right. So the priority is going to be set by whatever the stakeholders' priorities are. So we really want to understand, and we start to have the conversation about, what are the business goals behind what you're doing. And so that's our conversation part of our process is, let's work on this problem together to figure out, when you need it, why you need it, if it can be pushed off, if the feature set can be reduced so that we can get it to you quicker, what
Yep.
those phases look like. And so there's a number of factors that go into that conversation.
I have it's I don't know how European or even how Dutch this principle. We have a what we call a Moscow principle, where the M, the S, the C, and the W stand, because that's where it's derived from, stands for must, should, could, and would.
Uh-huh.
For a client to understand the difference between the four, like must, okay, there's no debate, and then all the way on the other end of the spectrum is would, like, this would be nice. We can make this happen in one go and it doesn't cost too much extra. Sure. But having a client decide on where their feature lies, obviously with business goals and all of that, um, is at least in this part of the world a very commonly used mechanism. Um, and the reason I asked was kind of wondering if something similar is working on your side of the pond.
We don't go that detailed. We have two columns, must haves and nice to haves. Right. And
Okay.
so when we're getting into those types of details, we break it into into those columns just to simplify it. Um, and again, part of it is just the conversation with the client as to what it means to truly be a must-have, right? If it's an e-commerce site, is this affecting the ability to purchase, right? Is this feature going to affect the shopping experience, or is it just nice to have this because of something else? And again,
I want
can't think of
something
any
dynamic
specifics.
on that page.
Yeah.
That's always been my favorite. Like, it means
What?
absolutely nothing, but I want something
Yeah.
dynamic on that page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's dynamic? Give
Make
some,
it pop.
yeah, make it pop. Uh, I don't hear those those types of requests. Same goes with can you make the logo bigger or smaller? I don't hear those as much as I used to. Uh,
Yeah,
which
we
is
don't either.
I was going to say, I think that's an indication of the market maturing. Would you say that that's something that you can see as a trend? Because I think I see it on my end, where the type of clients, and maybe this is because I focus on not entry level type of site building. I mostly build for a specific purpose, so scale or performance, usually both. So that attracts a different type of client for sure. But I've also noticed that the way of communication and the level of knowledge on the side of the client is higher and more professional than it was 15, 10 years ago, even, heck, even 5 years ago. Is that something you find as well, or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing this since, 95 where which I at that point, I had to tell people what the web even was,
Yeah.
right? And so at this point, we're finding, all of our clients, have had a website for a while, have been through multiple iterations, have been through multiple developers, um, and that actually helps with our onboarding conversation, right?
I believe
Because
it does.
we're able to ask, what were your pain points with some of the, past relationships? What can we do differently? Those are, yeah, absolutely. At this point, I don't know that I've encountered a client that hasn't worked on something within our space. And I think we're very similar to you, right? We're working on projects. The key differentiator for us is we work on sites and applications that are the business rather than about the business.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think I'm roughly in the same area.
Yeah.
It, it is the core facility. So I don't do a lot of presentation sites anymore,
Mm-mm.
which is, I guess, the easy way to explain the difference. But so I see that as well, changing more mature type of clients, better understanding consequences of choices. Um, your tech stack, what you like to use, because you started out explaining that you started to use WordPress, needed more folks, needed more better network to either hire freelancers from or offload work to or whatever. At what point did you start using other applications or solutions as well? Because
Yeah, great question. So, we took we started working in WordPress because we needed content management, and a lot of what we were building at the time, well, before we brought on WordPress, was just home base stuff, right? And
Mhm.
so it just wasn't robust enough for what we were doing, and so brought on WordPress to do content management. Adopted WooCommerce. So WooCommerce is really our e-commerce platform of choice.
Yep,
We
same
do
here.
a little bit of Shopify work, and I've seen. We can talk about Shopify versus WooCommerce, if you want, but we've seen a pretty big boom in Shopify over the past few years. So we do a little bit of Shopify work. That's on the website side. On the SaaS side, so we build a lot of SaaS products. That's all Laravel. And so
Yep.
we adopted Laravel probably about, I want to say 5 years ago. And so my engineers, my server side engineers are either WordPress or Laravel, and some do both.
Yep.
So those are two PHP frameworks of choice. And then on the mobile side, we still built in Swift and Kotlin for native mobile apps, but lately, I'd say the past couple of years, have been building a lot in React Native for
Okay.
anything in mobile.
I'm using Flutter there.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I'm familiar with it, with what it does. I'm not. We've never used it.
It's appealing to me in the sense that it's a relatively straightforward framework, and you build one app and it deploys to
Mhm.
two app stores. It's the type of synergy I think that should be there for all type of, but
Yes.
I can also be swayed into using and looking at different platforms altogether. For myself, I decided not to jump into the JavaScript any deeper than I have. If I need it more, then I have people I can employ. Um, but so the tech stack has changed. I think for a lot of folks around that same time, right? Laravel started to really mature. We're using it as well for where it makes sense. Sometimes it makes a whole lot of sense, and sometimes it's still shoehorning it into a direction that if you know how to work and wield WordPress, then you know you're already solving a lot of stuff just by using WordPress instead of I know I have the better version here with Laravel. Um, what in terms of WordPress and the stack within WordPress, are there things inside that are you that you're using differently? Are you changing, for instance, to full site editing yet, or using a any page builder preference, or just um, classic as much as possible?
Typically, when we're building a WordPress site, we're not deploying a page builder. Most of our clients count on us to do the, soup to nuts. So,
Yeah.
um, page builders we have worked in the past. We've worked in Beaver Builder and Elementor, like them both. And so, those are just the two that we're familiar with. Um, but something you said I think is important, right? We always want to find the right tool for the job, right? So we're never shoehorning anything into WordPress, and we're never shoehorning anything into Laravel, right? We really do, and we're analyzing a project. We look at what's the right tool for the job. Sometimes we deploy both, depending on what we need.
Yep.
We actually built a library. We built a lot of libraries for ourselves. We built a library specifically to get Laravel to talk to WordPress that we've deployed, many times. And so that we can exchange data between the two.
Yeah. I think that's the smart way. I mean, this is me going back to um, running projects that build some sort of software solution. Sure, I had preference because it was something that we've used before, and therefore it, and its limitations, and it's easy to project into. Okay, so you want this? I kind of know that, so let's I see a match, so let's just make that happen. But it should have always been that you pick the tool for the job instead of the other way around. I have the job, and now I'm going to shoehorn this tool into it. I still see that happening. Is that something you see, or
Oh, all the time.
yeah,
Yeah. We
I
we do we do a lot of project takeovers where I can tell that the project was done by somebody that knew one system,
yeah, same here.
and and tried to make it tried to bend it too much. And that's ultimately what became the why the project failed.
Yeah, I finished a migration actually, literally yesterday, where a group of people built a site and so overcomplicated things because they were used to a particular um, way of working, which is correct in the sense that it's a more developer friendly approach. So their basis was Bedrock, but then
Mhm.
they deviated from Bedrock in like six, seven different ways. So there was somewhat of a standard which they're not really using, and then it became complicated and just not like if you wanted to change something, you were breaking something, which is
Yep.
one of my goals is when I build something, I literally say this to clients: when I build you something, I want you to be fine for 3 to 5 years, depending on how complex of a thing that we build for you. But the minimum is 3 years. So that means in an ideal world, I don't have to touch your site for 3 years. If you want new stuff, you want to change things, you want to delete stuff, sure. But in essence, you're roughly going to be okay, because that means I build in a future friendly way, right? So I don't have to clench my butt cheeks every single time there's a major WordPress update because stuff gets optimized over there.
Yeah.
I need to fix it in the code for the site, that which is ridiculous, but that's exactly what this project was. So um,
One thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. One thing I've always said to my clients is, um, we want to build a project that somebody else can take over, either somebody
exactly.
on your team or another team, and a lot of people describe this as the bus factor, right? If one
Y-
of our engineers gets hit by a bus, right? How many engineers have to get hit by a bus before the project can't be worked on anymore, right? I like to be a little bit more positive. Right? I tell my clients, listen, if I win the lottery tomorrow, you cannot get a hold of me anymore. I still want this project to live on. And so that's one thing. I mean, we want to work on standardized tools and work in a standardized way where somebody else can adopt this project. But more importantly, in addition to being the project being able to be taken over, we want the team to be able to expand, right? So we tell our clients, hey, listen, might not be the only team working on this project in the future, right? We still want to be involved, but there may be other teams that need to be pulled into this
Yep.
project.
Yep.
And if we're building a standardized way, then the project can grow.
Exactly. I like the way you make that a positive thing instead of the bus, but I think I'm gonna start using that one as well. But then I'm gonna coin it like this: once I get Strebel money, if listening,
Uh,
yeah,
Hi, Josh.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, he's doing
So,
Bach now, which is definitely on my bucket list, which will never happen. But man, that's awesome.
yeah.
Side,
Yeah, there. I wanted to ask you if you're familiar with a technology for Laravel called Filament.
yeah, I know of it. Uh,
Okay.
haven't used it myself, but it's
Yeah,
quite
we sponsor them. We recently opened up a sponsorship with them
cool.
this year. Filament is phenomenal for building for rapidly building dashboards
Yeah,
inside of Laravel. It's got a couple of limitations that we ran into, but it's great. And we sponsored it because we were building our own widgets that we kept using over and over again, and the maintenance of those widgets became a job by itself. And so
yeah.
once we found this, we started adopting it, and it's been great.
I think I remember it mostly from. So I don't know if you know, but we're building a SaaS ourselves, and we is my co-founder, Buddy Coy. It's called Scanfully, and for that we need a dashboard. So
Mm,
what does a builder that builds a lot of these things use? It's most likely going to use whatever we're familiar with, and this was one of the examples that we looked at. We ended up going with React
mhm.
and essentially using an HTML template and then sort of um, connecting the two. For our stack, it makes more sense. But this is a good example of where if you're using so much stuff that is somewhat already a framework, then why not adopt a framework and sort of go from the like the 80-20% principle, right? The Pareto
Right,
principle. If 80% of what you need is done by somebody else, I'm not going to spend 20 80% of my time figuring out how to fix those 20%.
right.
I'd like it the other
And
way around.
frankly,
That's
eh,
how I use WordPress. That's how I use any other tool. I really don't care. So I'll give you one example. If there's a I have a few clients that have huge databases like 80, 90 gigs. If I need to change something throughout the entire database and I'm going to rely either even if I do it on CLI, I'm going to be entering a process that is lasting probably the entire day,
yes,
which is ridiculous, especially considering there are other options. Like there's other ways of manipulating data inside a database if you know what you're doing and you're doing it in a sound fashion. So whether that's Rush or whether that's I don't know Go or there's so many other techniques and possibilities out there. Um, Buddy is one of those people that understands those technologies and he's built stuff that then handles that huge database and just runs for 20 minutes, which suits me a lot better than 24 hours
sure.
because it introduces instability. This is a good example of you have to be flexible in what tool you're using. But I have a tendency to look at frameworks, just like you said. It just makes it more sense. Like, and if you can find that flexibility, I'm sure you're going to see the benefits of it as well. It's not just I'll save myself some time. No, it's an entire way of thinking.
Yeah, and you touched on something earlier that I think is important, right? We both have taken over projects or migrated projects where another developer sort of got stuck in their ways, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
they, they got stuck with what they know. Um, One thing that we've always encouraged, with our team is learning, keep learning, find out what's out there, right? And there's solutions that come out every day. And so we're constantly, looking for the next, thing that can save us time and ultimately, get our um, projects to market quicker.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's about that. I think it's. I asked you earlier, like, have you seen a trend of changes in terms of what type of clients and how they present themselves and how savvy they are? I think you and I both agree that yes, we have seen that change. If you project that into the future, like where do you is it even possible? Let me start with that one. Is it even possible to project any learnings that you've had in your case, almost 3 decades, into what you can safely assume is going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years? Is there a learning? And feel free to
Talking,
be either business or technical or anything.
yeah,
I'm
sure.
I'm kind of asking
Um,
if possible. I know.
I mean, with AI, we're now in a phase where things are just moving very rapidly, right? And and so I get asked a couple things pretty regularly. I get asked, first off, on the client side, if we're implementing AI or using something like Filament or using a new technology that makes us more efficient, right? What does that do to to project cost, right? And I've always said the same thing over over 30 years. What we're the value that we're bringing as an agency is our experience. Right. And if we can get something to market quicker, right, there's a value in that. Doesn't matter how many hours it took us to get there, how we got there, right?
Mhm.
We're bringing expertise and years of experience that make us more efficient. And
Yeah.
so over the years, we've switched from hourly pricing and time and materials to value based pricing, right? Because we're I'm as much of the clients is for my team, I'm trying to get my team to look at the value that they're bringing. An engineer is always going to tend to default to hours, right? How many hours did it take me,
I
right?
don't know.
Uh,
20
right, right, right. And so
has to be.
engineer gets more efficient, and they do 20 hours of work in 2 hours. They bill for 2 hours,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's the default, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so by switching to value-based pricing, it changes the conversations we've had, and it also allows us to be really transparent with our clients. Hey, these are new things that we've brought in. This is how we're developing these things, right? Because it's making us more efficient, in getting you to market quicker.
Yep.
So we're completely transparent with with how we build our projects. So that's on the client side. What I see is just additional efficiency, right? But you need people that have the expertise to be able to put it to good use and communicate that to clients. Right?
Yep.
On the technology side, we adopted AI pretty quickly, with the way we code. And so we're again, things change every single day. And so we carve out some time within our week for our engineers to learn and to see what's happening and experiment, because we want to find the new tools that are going to make us more efficient.
Yep.
And so right away, as soon as ChatGPT started creating code, we use it as a copilot, right? So it sits next to all of our coders, and they're using ChatGPT as an assistant. They're also using GitHub Copilot, and they use all the stuff that's been built into PHP Storm.
It's
Um,
kind of ridiculous if you're still thinking that you're better off without. If I'm
Absolutely.
if I'm really honest, my first, s- I'd say the first bucket of things that I used ChatGPT for is when inheriting projects, the chances are pretty high that you'll find undocumented code or even worse, spaghetti code.
Uh,
And ChatGPT has its flaws in many ways because I still think it has trouble counting, just straight up counting. But if you ask it to debug or explain uh, even hundreds of lines of code, it'll do it. But
mhm.
obviously, you need to have the prompt that goes with it. But I've had it solve so many shit for me because I don't have a nicer word for it.
No, that's the right word. And
And it does it almost flawlessly. Like if you're constantly fine tuning your prompts, it is such a game changer. And to think, to have the, I will even say this, to have the arrogance to think that it is not possible to help you in your processes, that's ridiculous. At the very least, rubber duck it. Why am I doing this? Why is that being called? Is there a better way? Is there a more performant way? What is the cost efficiency? Ask it even side related questions to code. It's just amazing what it will tell you.
I agree. And, you know, people that are outside the industry that I talk to, have this perception that ChatGPT is going to put all coders out of business,
No,
right? Just
not
like it's
really.
going to put all writers out of business or all lawyers out of business. And it's not the right way to look at it, right? ChatGPT is just a tool. That's all it is, right?
Yeah,
Um, it's a, it, it's a, it's a new tool and it's rapidly, getting better and better. And we're now operating in an era of lightning speed, like, the way these things change. But here's you know, um, somebody said to me, when ChatGPT, first started coming out, um, they said, um, uh, how would they say, we were having a conversation about how ChatGPT was going to put all copywriters out of business, right?
mm,
Um, and I said, but and somebody during that conversation said, you know what, I saw a job ad recently, right? For somebody that could make hundreds of $1,000s, if for just prompting Chat GPT for copywriting, right? Is what they said to me. I said, yeah. Do you know what that person is called? A writer.
yeah.
And so,
That's a
it's the
good.
same way in any profession, right?
Yeah,
ChatGPT can write code, but in the hands of an inexperienced coder, it's gonna produce shit.
yeah, yeah. If and the same for programming and stuff. So there's programming languages it's better at than others. But if you ask it to do command line stuff, if you ask it to do Bash, WP CLI scripts, and I've always used WP CLI quite extensively.
Me
Uh,
too.
I've scripted WP CLI into Bash scripts wherever it makes sense. But there's always a limit to what you can think of, and before you have to call yourself a Bash developer. Uh, uh, there's the stuff that you can think of, but you don't know where to start and how to build it because you've never done it. That's where ChatGPT is just shining because this is what I'm solving right now. This is my script here. I want to add this. Can you suggest me like two different ways of doing this? And it'll tell you. And you can
Yep.
then, you know, Google that afterwards and then verify if it works or not. That's the easy part. But the whole let it give you ideas, that's where you need to see its power. Um, Not in the I'm going to be replaced by it.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. That's different than going to ChatGPT and saying, "Create me a WordPress plugin that does this."
Yeah.
It's just not going to do that for you.
Some few basic things, sure, but if you guide it along, this is the framework, and this is how I want you to
Sure.
solve this, and here's an example of this, and then and work with this, and or this is what I have, and I need it to be more performant because right now a lot of traffic is going to bring it down. You explain what you want from it, and it'll do it. So no, I agree. I think that's there's a huge change coming still. I think people think that the change came when ChatGPT launched out of beta. It's not. It's just warming up.
Agreed.
The big
Yeah.
thing is just way beyond the horizon still, and we're getting glimpses. That's it. And I mean that in a positive way. This is
Yeah.
not a
I
gloom. Yeah,
I wholeheartedly agree.
yeah. I figured you would. You're a smart guy, so
Thank thank you. I appreciate that. I'll send you a check.
yeah. Just my PayPal account isn't all. No, but yeah, I think let me at least say that I think you are, from a business standpoint, have always been producing the right type of content and quality. Obviously, having seen some of your talks, but it's nice to hear somebody on the same wavelength in terms of, uh, let me just bracket it as, not doom and gloom what's ahead of us, because there's, there's, if you're flexible with technologies, if you understand the possibilities, then there's a huge amount of growth right in front of us.
Well, and I think one of the things that I think um that we just talked about on this past 45 minutes is um anything that we do in the agency space and the tech space within ChatGPT, right? What you bring, right? What I bring to the table, and what the people that have been successful in the space bring to the table is that human element, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's never going to go away, no matter how good the technology gets, right? That human element is important. Whether you're networking, connecting, whether you're communicating with a client, about a project, um, what you put into ChatGPT, that human element is critical. And I would argue that it's even more critical today than it was when I started this business.
I was going to say, which is why I started this podcast.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And on that bombshell, I'd like to thank you for attending. Um,
My pleasure, man. It's been great.
it's been my pleasure as well. Thank you so much, man.